Alright, so welcome to another one on this channel, and on this occasion we will go through all the machines available on the Syntakt. Now some of them are easy and some of them are just a little bit more complex. Still, we will go through all of them and talk about every single param that we get on all the different machines. Everything is in chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can start a new machine or skip it. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can go to the links at the description. Since we have a digital engine right here at the top and an analog engine, is going to be a lot of machines. We have the digital, again, we have the analog, and then we have the analog symbol, which is going to be this, and these are just, completely different machines from the other ones. Now, we will start with the analog, with the ones we have right here. Then we're going to go through all the digital ones, and we're going to end this video with the symbol ones. Okay, so we're going to start, I'm going to go to the 9, and the first machine is going to be the BD heart. Now, some options that we have right here, some params, are going to be the same for all the other machines. So I'm just going to be explaining this a couple of times, and then as we move forward, I'm not going to be explaining them because it's just pretty much the same option, right? It wouldn't make sense for me to go through all the different machines and explain how the stim works every single time. So every time that you go through a machine, maybe you go to the Silky, you need to make sure that you understand the previous ones because most of the machines will use or will reuse some of the same controls. Okay, so I'm going to be starting with the first one is going to be the BD heart. So by default, you get your tune, and this one is pretty simple. We get it pretty much for all the different machines. You can hold the function and go up by octaves if you wanted to. I'm gonna stay maybe around. I'm gonna stay around there. There we go. Maybe I'm gonna go a little bit up because I want to show you something. So the stem is going to be the pitch sweep time. If I go all the way to 0 right now, you can see the fundamental right there in the spectrum. You can see that peak. Right? So that's going to be the fundamental. So as we go up on this one, that peak, the fundamental, is going to sweep up and then go back to the fundamental tone. And I'm going to keep playing it, and I'm going to be moving the sweep, the stem. And notice that it's doing it, but it's super fast. As I keep going up, we start noticing, and at some point, it's going to be very noticeable. Keep going up. And now we can hear it. Notice that it starts on that fundamental and then goes up and then goes back down. If we keep going up, again, it's just going to be a little bit more obvious. There we go. So how far it goes, notice that when we play it, it's going to a point and then going back. How far it goes, we cannot decide it. This is fixed on this control. On some other machines, we can decide how far the pitch sweep goes. But in this one, we have a fixed control. So I'm going to maybe stay around there. Now then we have the decay. Now this is one of the controls that we have on most of the machines. This is how long the kick is going to be. So if I go up in the decay, the kick is going to be, super long. You can go all the way to inf, which is going to be holding it. And if I, again, play it, we can see all the harmonics that we are generating behind the scenes. This is like your, like the picture of your kick. Now going down, it's going to be long, but still, it's not going to be infinite. It's not going to sustain it. But still, it's going to be pretty long. Most of the machines have the stem and they have the decay. So if you want to default, you can do hold, the syn, and then go to clear, and it's going to clear this page. It's going to take it back to default. Now we need to talk about the snap. So this one, it will give you an initial snap. If I go all the way down, it sounds different. I want you to look at the oscilloscope. So when I go up on the oscilloscope like that, notice that the initial part of the waveform is like, really crunched. So this will give us an initial snap. If I go down, it's going to be a little bit more rounded and long. So we get less snap, less, an initial transient. But still, we have a tick right here. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So next in the chain is going to be your wave. So by default, this is using, the analog, of course, it's using an oscillator to generate sound. So by default, it's going to be using a sine wave. And, that's what it's using. But we have different profiles. We can use the next one. It's going to be an asymmetrical sine. The main difference is that this one has more harmonics, right? So we are going to be getting just a harder kick and not so smooth. Again, look at the oscilloscope. right? Just a little bit different. And the next one is going to be a triangle. So this one is going to be a lot harder. And you notice that we can really hear the difference. Right? It's because we have a lot more harmonics with the triangle than a sine wave. Alright, so again, you can choose the styles. There's just 3 different styles. So I'm gonna go up in the decay just a little bit, something like that. And I'm gonna go to the halt, and I'm gonna go all the way up in the halt. As soon as I play it, what this does is gonna make the kick last a lot longer in amplitude, is holding it at the, right there at the top. And I want you to look at the meter. I'm showing a meter right now. The kick goes up, stays down, up for maybe, I'm gonna say long time, but it stays up. Now, if I go all the way down, it's going to go up and instantly go down. So it's much faster. And this one is gonna hold it right there at the top for a lot more time. If I go down, right, so this is what it will do. Now, all of this will just affect your track because maybe your kick is way too long and occupying a lot of a space. So you're gonna need to tone your decay and your hold just to make it, a little bit shorter and make it fixed, make it, make it fit on your track, right? So these are fundamental controls. So I'm gonna hold the syn and I'm gonna reset everything back to the beginning. And we need to talk about the tick. Now, if I go down to the tick, I'm gonna go down. It gives us less transient at the beginning. So at the beginning of the waveform, we should be getting a super hard transient. In this case, we are just not get it. So it's a very rounded kick. As soon as I go all the way up in the kick, we can hear the tick. So this is going to be right at the beginning of the waveform. It depends on what you want to do. Maybe you don't like that tick that we get. You can go all the way down and have a very smooth sounding kick. Now, when I go up in the tick, you can see it on the spectrum. If I go up, I want you to look at the spectrum on the, around the 10K, right there at the top. That's the tick. If I go all the way down to the tick, notice that we have a kind of a scooped, part in the frequency. And if I go up, the tick is going to start showing its face. Right? So all of this depends on, the type of kick that you want to get. Now then we have the overdrive, and this is one of the controls that we get on most of the machines. Going up in over is going to really saturate the kick. Notice that it's going from almost a sine wave to, a square, right? It's pretty much a square right there. So it's gonna really crush it. Now it depends on what you want to do. You need to decide how much overdrive you want. That's it, for the BD heart. Now the next ones are going to be maybe a little bit easier because I'm not going to explain some of the controls because we already talked about them. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the BD classic. I'm going to go there, and it's going to be very different from the previous one, the BD heart, right? Super different. Now this one, we have the same controls. We can adjust the tune if we wanted to. We have the steam, which is going to be the sweep pitch time, right? So if I go all the way down, we can see the fundamental right there. And as I go up on this one, we're going to start hearing or watching, seeing that pitch. I'm going to make it long in the decay so we can see it sweeping. If I go all the way down, we just pretty much get nothing. Alright, pretty simple controls. You can really see it now. Now, on the previous one, on the BD heart, we have no independent control of how long or how far the pitch sweep goes. Now, but on this one, we do have, it's going to be the S depth. So is the sweep depth. So if I do something, I'm going to go aggressive on this one. Maybe not that much. If I go there, going all the way down on this one, notice that we get nothing. We get no sweep. And it's because this one is the one deciding how far the sweep goes. So as we go up on this one, we can go to Crazy Land, which is sounds that, doesn't sound like a kick. So we can go all the way up. Now, if I make it shorter, it's just going to be just like that, right? So you need to fine tune your depth, where you want to start on the sweep, and then how much do you want to do, how long it's going to be taking. All this is, again, completely up to you. Now, then you have the decay. If you go all the way up, just like the previous one, it's going to be sustaining right there at the top, so we can see all the harmonics, right? But, maybe I'm going to make the decay just something like that. Just like the BD hard, you get the wave control. So you have a sine wave, which is going to be not that, not that aggressive, less harmonics. We have the other one, the asymmetrical sine wave, which is, a little bit more harmonics. And then we have the triangle, which is going to be a lot more harmonics. All right, so I'm going to do syn and reset it back to default. And we get something like that. So we still have the hold time just like before. I'm going to go maybe up a little bit on the decay, and then I'm going to go to the hold. Remember, if we go all the way up in the hold, it's going to hold up there in amplitude a lot more time. And if I go all the way down, it's going to be up and down pretty fast. Still, all of this depends on your decay. That's your main control. Right, so again, I'm going to stay around there. Now, on the previous one, we have something that calls tick. This is going to give us, that tick, that initial transient at the beginning. And it's going to be showing on the upper frequencies. It's like a noise, is a part of the noise. Now, this one, it uses that same thing. It uses noise to generate the tick, but it also is going to be doing something else. So I'm going to be going to here, and I'm going to go all the way off. If we play it, we have no tick, right? So we can remove it. Now, if I go to the first one right there, it's going to say tick. So here it's using the same thing than the other one. Now, the thing is that we don't get it. So we need to go up, and notice that it will go up in level. And now we get it. And notice that on the oscilloscope, we get a tiny transient, like a peak at the beginning of the waveform. If I go down, we just don't get it. So this is going to be the tick, right? It's going to give you that initial tick. Now, the thing is that on the other ones, we get different profiles. If I keep scrolling, it's going to go to A1. Now, if you're all the way down on A1, you're doing nothing. And then, you need to go up on each profile. And notice that first I'm going to go, you have A1, you have B1, C, and then D1, and then it's E, and then A2, and then so on and so on and so on. So you have all the way to the E, and you have two different profiles of each. I'm going to go back to the A. So if I go back to the A, if you are all the way down, you get nothing. If I go up on the A1 and go full, notice it sounds a little bit different. And I want you to look at the oscilloscope. Look at the waveform. So this is what it does. It's going to use a noise source to pretty much create that modulation, and it gives us noise. As we go up, we just get it. Now, the thing is that we have different profiles. The B is going to be a little bit different in terms of noise, and we can see it on the oscilloscope and hear it as well. If I go up on the C, way different. So it's a lot more aggressive, right? And if I keep going to the D, and now we can really hear it, and we can see it on the waveform. All the noise that we have right there. Now, if I keep going up, I'm going to go to the E. And now it still sounds like noise, but it's a little bit different. And then we go to the other, the number 2, which is going to be a different type of noise. And it's going to sound different. And every time that we go up, just going to be a little bit more aggressive with that noise. So right here, you just need to find the tone and the temper that you like for each noise, and just use the one you want. And notice that if I keep playing and sweep this control, we just get different timbres for the noise. Right. So this is what this one is going to do. So it gives you a lot more control over the tick. Now, still you have your overdrive. You can, go all the way in overdrive and just destroy it completely if you wanted to. All right. So I'm going to go to the next, and it's going to be BDFM. And this one, it's, we are entering into the FM, or modulated by something else type of bass drums. So on this one, we have a main source, like the main oscillator, that sits at the top, and it's going to be called the carrier. And then at the bottom, we have a hidden source or sound source that will be a different oscillator that will modulate it modulate the carrier in some fashion. This is called the modulator. So we have the main oscillator at the top, and then we have the modulator modulating the carrier. So we have two sources, carrier and modulator. Now everywhere right here where we see FM, FMT, FMS, FMA, and then we see it right here, FMD. When it says FM, it's talking about the modulator, not the carrier. So this is the one doing the modulation. Now if I play something, if I go all the way up on this control, which is going to be the amplitude of how much modulation the FM is going to do to the main oscillator, we get a pretty, a pretty extreme effect. If I go all the way down, we are doing no modulation. We are not modulating the carrier. So if I play it, we just get a smooth, very, dull sounding kick. Just a normal kick. So again, this is going to control whatever you do on the carrier. It doesn't matter if I go all the way crazy on, maybe not that one, on this controls. This is the one that controls how much modulation we do in terms of FM. So I'm going to go back to default on that page. And I'm going to stay right there. So that's how it sounds by default. So I'm going to be still going all the way down on the depth. So we have nothing. We have the pitch control. I guess at this point, I don't need to explain it. Then we have the steam. It's going to be, the pitch swip. If I go all the way down, you can see the fundamental right there. Maybe I'm going to make it a little bit longer, right? If I go up on the steep, we can see the pitch sweep. Right, so again, this is like the BD heart. It's going to be controlled. It has a fixed control for the depth. We cannot really go crazy up like the classic one. So then the decay again is how long you want to make it. On this one, you cannot go to extremes. You will have some kind of decay. Still, it says pretty long, right? But it's going to stay around there. Now you have your overdrive just like before. You can go up and just crush it. And then we have all the other controls that are going to be about the modulator, not the carrier. Everything else was the carrier. So if I go up on the FM, we are going to be doing frequency modulation, and we are frequency modulating the carrier. This is how much we do it. I'm going to go full so we can really hear what is going on. So on this one right here, the first one, it's going to be the T. Now the T is the tune of the modulator. It's just the tune. It's just like this one. But this one is going to be affecting the carrier. The modulator. So moving it, we can feel that the timbre of the kick changes. And going all the way down, just way different, right? So this is like tune control of your modulator. So just like the steam, with this one we control the steam of the carrier. But in this one we control the steam of the modulator. And it's just the same control, but it's going to be working on the modulator and not the carrier. Now, if you know a little bit of FM, maybe you don't, it doesn't matter. So what happens is that, again, we have an oscillator that sits at the top. And this oscillator, the second one, is going to modulate the first one. And depends on how it's modulating and how hard it is and how loud. And if we have an envelope, this sound, it's going to be, really affected. So right here, we have the FMD, which is going to be the decay of the modulator. So if I go really short, it's going to be almost not affecting it. We get it, but what happens is just going to be a little bit harder, and we can see it right there on the waveform. We go from something sounding smooth with a little bit more punch. Now still, if we make it longer, it's going to modulate it harder because we are allowing more signal of the modulator go through to the carrier. Right? If we go really crazy, we can create really cool sounds. Maybe I can go there to chromatic. Right? So double tapping the stop is going to stop the playback engine. But again, you can really create really cool sounds that are not very, drum sounding, sounds, let's say. All right, so let's keep moving forward. Now we need to go to the BD plastic. So I'm going to stay in there, and this is how it sounds. So this one is like the FM. We have, but the difference that with the other one, with the previous one, the FM, is that we have a lot less controls over the modulator. Now it does a combination of types of modulation behind the scenes. And if I still go to mod, which is going to be the amplitude of how much we are modulating, I'm going to go all the way down. So go all the way down in the modulator. Still is going to do something. And if I change the type, we get a change in sound. And it's because this type is going to be doing a linear FM type when we go up in the mod. But when I go to the other one, the type 1 is going to be FM with the ring modulation. So we can hear more of the ring modulation than the FM. But if I go up on this one is a combination of FM and ring modulation. If I go to the first one, it's going to be just linear FM. Now this again is how hard we are going to modulate the carrier, just like the previous one. And if you kind of are a little bit lost, I'm assuming that you already know how this one works, how the BDFM works. So if I keep going up, notice that at some point, it's going to be really modulated. We're going to modulate it really hard. And going down, it's going to be a lot smoother. So that's it for this one, right? So we get to modulate it like that with the type number 1, or we get to modulate it with FM and ring modulation. That's all. This is the only thing this one can do. Now the rest of the controls are pretty much the same. I'm gonna go all the way down on this one. So we have the steam again, and the tune, of course. Steam is going to be the sweep depth, and I'm gonna go up in decay, so we can see the sweep, not the depth. This is going to be the time. Now this can control depth. It's just like the BD Classic. If I go all the way down, we get no sweep, no depth for the sweep. As I keep going up, it's going to keep going further and further. Right, so again, it's just a very basic control at this point. We have it, on all the other machines, on most of the other machines. So, okay, so, again, pretty simple. Now, then we have the, right here, the tick. And the tick is just like the first one. If I go all the way up at the top, we get a tick right there. Maybe I'm going to be doing this aggressively. If I go down on the tick, maybe not. We get less tick. Go up, we get more in an initial transient. Right, so again, just a pretty simple. Now this one, it's a little bit different from the FM. On this one, we have a lot more control over the modulator. And this one is just a little bit more kind of straightforward. And we still have the overdrive, so, we can just crush it if you wanted to. Now I'm going to go to Syn and I'm going to go back to the default. Now, especially with the plastic and the FM, and from now on, we can turn the oscillator, whatever, the machine, to make it sound like something completely different. If I maybe go to the mod and I'm going to go all the way crazy, so we do something like that, I'm going to stay on type 1, and I'm going to make less depth, and I'm going to make pretty much nothing on this ones. And I'm going to go up in the decay. Right, so we can even crush it if we wanted to. So now this one sounds like something else. Maybe I can do funk and then go up, in the pitch. So it could sound like a bass. Maybe I can go to the filter and just do something like this. Go up in resonance and maybe do envelope. So now, right, make it a little bit shorter. And if I go to function and then track, we can go maybe to, we can go to the chromatic mode. Maybe go to the amp, add a little bit of like this, I'm going to go down the volume, go to the attack, you go to the delay and just use it as a bass sound. Right? So you can turn the oscillator, the machine, to something, completely different. All right, so I'm going to go to the Silky one, and I'm going to stand right there. I'm going to be playing this. And notice how it sounds. Now, this one is way, way simple. It's just like the classic, the BD Classic. We have very basic controls. So we have the tune, we have the sweep time. I'm going to make the decay longer. There's the decay of the kick. At this point, I believe I don't need to explain this. Then we have this steam. If I go all the way down, we can see the fundamental there. And if I go up, we can see that sweep. And this is going to be controlling the depth, nothing. And if we go all the way up, we can adjust the depth of the sweep. Pretty simple controls. Now then we have the hold, and it's the same thing than before. It's just going to sustain it a little bit more at the top. And if we make it shorter, it's going to be a little bit shorter. Right, so pretty simple. And then the overdrive, right? So the only difference with this one is that we get the click and we get the dust. So I'm gonna go to default, So right here, the click so far we've been using the click, and what we get is a click generated by noise and or something else, but it's mostly noise. Now on this one, the main difference is that the click is generated by an oscillator, by a VCO. If I go all the way down, we have less click, and you need to see the oscilloscope. And as I keep going up, we start to get that peak. But this one is not noise. It's VCO generated, right? So we get that peak right there on the oscilloscope. Right. So this is what this one will do. Now I'm gonna maybe go down on this one. I'm gonna do a little bit. Okay, so then we have the dust. Now this one is pretty mild. If I remove it, almost no difference. If I go all the way up, again, it's not noticeable, but it's noticeable if you're using good headphones or good speakers. So the dust is static. It's going to try to add a little bit of lo-fi sound. So if you take a look at the spectrum, right there at the top, right there on the higher part of the higher frequencies, the higher part of the spectrum, we can see that noise right there. If I go down, it's just not there. So this is what the lo-fi is gonna do. I'm sorry, not lo-fi, the dust. It's just adding a little bit of noise and mud right there at the top. And if you crush it, since you're crushing it, it's gonna be a little bit more noticeable. Go all the way down, no dust, and then dust. So again, this kick, I would use it to create that kind of a lo-fi type of vibe. All right, so coming up next is going to be not the Silky, it's going to be the BD sharp. I'm going to say yes, and we are standing on the BD sharp. Now this one is way simple. It's just like the classic. We have the basic controls. We can do the tune. Then we have the steam, which is going to be the sweep. Maybe I'm going to go up in the decay. Again, we can control the decay, go all the way up, or just a tiny little bit. We can hear that sweep. If I go nothing, that's the fundamental. And right here, we can decide how much, the depth of the sweep. Right, so again, we already talked about this controls on the other machines. And the tick is going to be the same tick that we get on the other ones. We get the tick right there and no tick. And then we have the overdrive, pretty simple, and we have the hold. Right, so we already talked about all these controls. There's nothing new on this machine. It's pretty much the same than the previous ones. The first ones, like the ones we have at the top, the hard and the classic. So there's nothing different, but there's a tiny little bit tiny little difference. So it's going to be the wave. On the previous ones, we cannot really choose the main waveform of the oscillator that is generating the kick sound or whatever sound. So we have a sine wave or a type of variation between a sine wave. But in this one, we can choose. That's the main point of what we can do with this. So we have a sine wave. We can do that one. Then if I keep going up, we have a asymmetrical sine wave. If you keep going up, you have a triangle, and we get a lot more harmonics. But then if you keep going up, we have a different waveform that we didn't have before. This one is going to be sine tooth. And if you keep going up, you get sawtooth. So, you get a lot more harmonics. Now, all of this depends on what you want to do. Maybe the decay is too long for a kick. But you're just getting a lot more harmonics. You can just maybe shape it with the filter and the amp and just, shape it in the way you want. But the fact that you can choose, the waveform that you can use to generate sound, it's really cool. Now, what you use, well, there's all that. It's just going to be depending on what you want to create. There's a difference between some of them. Notice that there's a tiny kind of a anchor or a square right there. at the beginning. So, well, this means that the waveform will restart or not. It's going to re-trigger it. And the not anchor, the not square at the beginning, it means that it's constantly running behind the scenes. And I'm talking about the oscillator that generates the sound. It's going to be constantly running behind the scenes like an old analog synth oscillator. Now, all of this is just going to give you different results because if the oscillator is constantly, moving behind the scenes, and I'm going to maybe select that one, this is the free running. When I play a kick, we can have a waveform right there on the oscillator, and I want you to see the oscilloscope. And at some point, if I play it again, it's the same kick, but the waveform, the phase, just going to start on different places. It's not highly, consistent. Right? If I do it faster, we can see that it's changing every time I just play it. Now, the other one is going to re-trigger every time we play a kick. So the waveform always starts from the beginning. So now it's going to be a lot more consistent. Right? All of this just depends on what you want to do. And the other ones have the same function, it's re-trigger or not, then re-trigger or not, and the same, and the same, and the same. Now, this is the end of the bass drums. So we cover pretty much all the bass drums of the analog, the analog machines. Now we need to dive into the snare drums. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the first snare drum, machine. And I'm going to go to the one that says heart. That's the first one. And it sounds like that. So right from the start, with snares, we have a little bit more of harmonic content, right? And it's going to be, in the case of this one, 2 oscillators. Now, they can sound as a snare or make synth sounds. We have 2 main parts, the oscillators part, and then we have the noise part. And right here, we can see the noise level and the noise decay. And then as usual, we get the tick and we get the overdrive. So in this case, I'm going to remove the noise from the equation. I'm going to go all the way down on this ones, and I'm going to remove the tick. So if I play it, it's going to sound like that. So we get, the oscillator part of the machine and not the noise. So it doesn't sound like a snare. Sounds like something else. So noise is a very important part for snare on an analog snare in this case. Just like before with the other machines, we have the steam, the sweep depth, and the decay. If I go up on the decay, it's gonna sound like an oscillator, like I told before. Now then, maybe we can go to the steam and decide. Maybe I'm gonna go. I'm gonna keep it up. With the steam, it's gonna be the sweep time, and all this. If you watch the previous sections for the snare, is going to decide the sweep time for the main tone. If I go all the way down and all the way down on this one, we just get the fundamental tone. But then we can make it sweep. And we already talked about this, but maybe you're just starting on this section. So this is how you control sweep. Now this one is going to be the depth. If I go all the way down up on this one, we are going really up. But if I go down in depth, we have no depth. So we are back to the initial tone. This is how far it goes with that sweep. Right, so I'm gonna reset the machine, and we are back to the original sound. All of these controls, again, the overdrive and the tune, they work just like the other machines we've been discussing. And right now, I'm just assuming that you know how these ones work, because most of the controls repeat themselves. And it wouldn't make sense for me to, keep explaining the same controls over and over and over and over in detail, right? So we get the other part, it's going to be, we get the oscillator, which is fine. We already know how it works. And then we get the noise side. This is going to be the level of the noise. If you want a lot of noise, you're just going to get it. Just like the oscillator, we get a decay, but this one is going to control the decay of the noise. Right, I'm going to remove the tick. So if we want less noise, we just go down in the noise. If we want shorter noise, we just trim the length of the noise. And just like this, you just fine-tune your snare the way you want to. Maybe you want a little bit more noise, well, make it longer. Maybe it's too loud, go down in volume. You want to crush it, You can. So it's a really cool machine. Right, so then you have the tick, and the tick is going to be the initial transient. If I go all the way down in noise, I go up in tick, we get less tick, right? So that's pretty much it. So I'm going to double tap and I'm going to go to the next one. The next is going to be SD Classic. I'm going to stand there and make sure that we are starting, with a default sound. And this is how it sounds. Now, this one is really cool. Now, on the previous one, we had those two oscillators, but what happens with the other one is that we cannot control the oscillators separately. We cannot control them independently. We do it globally. Now, on this machine, the classic one, we can control them independently. And this is what, this machine will do. I'm going to go all the way down in the noise so we can remove that from the equation, and all the way down in the snap. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but it's, pretty obvious. So right here, you have your main tune. So this is going to be controlling the tune of your oscillator number 1. Now, then you have your oscillator number 2, and the oscillator number 2 by default is going to be detuned. So this detune is about the oscillator number 2. And I'm going to go all the way down. So here you have the valence. So if you go all the way here, all the way to, down, is going to be the oscillator number 1. If I go to the other side, it's going to be the oscillator number 2. And notice it sounds a little bit different than the oscillator number 2. It's just a little bit different. Now, the thing is that when you make a blend between, both, you can get both at the same time. But with this one, you can separate the oscillator number 2. And notice that if you see the spectrum, they're on the same spot. As soon as I detune it, the oscillator number 2 separates from the first one. And as we go up, right there, we see the oscillator 2 and then the peak, fundamental for the oscillator number 1. Now, all of this is just great because maybe we can generate sounds that are not snares. Maybe I can go up in pitch and we can get different sounds. Right, so really, really cool oscillator or machine in this case. And then again, you just need to find the sweet spot for the balance. If you want more of the 2 or if you want more of the 1. All right, so that's it. That's that's pretty much the whole machine. Now I'm gonna go to just what we have by default, and it is that now it sounds like a drum. I can bring a little bit more of the 2, and as we get the tone of the 2 right there at the top. And then, we decide how much noise we want and the decay of the noise. If we want it really long or we want a short noise. And the next thing is going to be the snap. If we want to remove the snap, it's going to be a little bit less. We don't have the transient at the beginning. And if you go up in the snap, we get it a little bit more. Right, and then we can crush it with the overdrive. So again, all of these controls are pretty simple because we know the previous machine. So if you're still a little bit confused and you don't know what's going on right here, make sure you watch the other, the sections for the other machines. All right, so let's go to the FM, and I'm going to make sure that we start with a clean machine. So as you can see, if I go back and I go all the way up, we can see with the bass drums, we are starting, with the oscillators and so on. And then at some point, we enter into the FM and the modulation world. Well, with the snare drums, it's just the same thing. We start easy and then we enter into the FM world. So I'm going to be going to the SD FM. And this is how it sounds. So just like the bass drum, the BS FM, we have a main oscillator, which is going to be the carrier that sits at the top. And at the bottom, we have a different oscillator, which is going to be the modulator. This is what is going to be modulating the carrier, right? So, okay, so everywhere again where we see FM, it means that it's talking about the modulator and not the carrier. So if I go to the FMA, it's going to be the amplitude of the modulator. So if I go down on this one, we are doing no modulation. So it sounds pretty dull. So we are just getting the noise and the fundamental tone of the main oscillator, which is the carrier. But as we go up on the FMA is the amplitude of the modulator. We are starting to do FM. So this goes a lot more aggressive. Right. So the tune is going to be the tune for the main oscillator, and actually for both. But then this one is going to alter the ratios of the modulator. That's why we get different tones. So remember that when we are working with carriers and modulators, every time that we change something on the modulator, it's going to change the nature of the carrier. But this is, it's controlling the tune of the modulator. Now then we can control the decay of the modulator and the decay of the carrier. If I make it really long, that's the carrier, but this one is going to be the modulator. Now we can make it really short just to get, a tiny little transient at the beginning, and not make it super long because that will really affect the sound. So that's it, you get your controls right here, this one, and this one for your modulator, and you get your main controls for your carrier. And then at the bottom, since this is a snare, we get, I'm going to go back to default, you get the noise right here. We go up in noise, we need some noise, right? So this is a snare. If I go to this one, this is going to be the decay of the noise, and you can crush it if you wanted to. You can do a little bit less of FM and make it sound a little bit more natural if you wanted to. So I'm gonna go to the next one, and it's the last of the snare drums, the analog snare drums. Now this one is super simple, the SD natural. Now on this one you don't get a lot, it's just pretty simple. You have an oscillator and you have a noise. That's it. So right here you have your valence. It's going to be all the way down is going to be just the noise, and all the way up is going to be the oscillator, the fundamental, oscillator. And all of this machine, it's all about the noise. If you go right here, you just can control with the valence how much, of noise and oscillator you do, and then the decay of the main sound. But everything else, this one, and this one are going to be about the noise. So we need some noise. I'm going to go all the way down to noise. So if I do something like this, it is that it's very snappy. So what this gives you is the decay of the noise. If you want to make it really long, but also, and this is the main feature of this machine, is that you can high pass and low pass the noise. So you can generate different timbres, within the same noise. If I open everything, do no resonance, open everything, it's just going to be a noisy noise. But you can maybe chop the low frequencies of the noise, and notice that we get it right there in the spectrum. And you can high pass the high frequencies of the noise and even add a little bit of resonance right there at the top, so we can add a peak. This is again the main feature of this machine. Now again, you just need to control it with the decay and then bring a little bit of your main tone, which is going to be, the main tone of your snare drum. Now all of this depends up to you. Maybe you want to make it a little bit lower, or maybe you want to make it a little bit higher. So you choose the balance right here between your sound, your noise, and your main oscillator. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the RS, these are going to be the rim shots, and they are very simple to understand. And if I play it, it sounds like... Right, so super simple. Now you have your tune, you just can detune it as much as you wish. Going to funk, we can go all the way to the beginning. And all the rest of the controls, we already know them. We have a noise level and tick level, and for now I'm just going to go all the way down. You can go up in the decay and make it sound like something else. Then the sweep, if I go all the way down, we will have no sweep. And we can go and make the pitch sweep. How long is going to go? The depth is going to be this one. So if I do nothing, the time is just nothing. If I go all the way up, we can really hear the sweep. All right. So that's fine. It's just pretty simple controls. We've been using them throughout the whole, the whole video. Now then you get a noise, so you can get a little bit of noise, and at the same time you get a tick, so you get an initial transient. Now the noise is not super aggressive. Maybe I'm gonna go all the way down on the depth. If I go all the way up in the noise, but this is there, but it's just very mild. Maybe we crush it, we just can get it a little bit more, but the noise is just pretty mild, but if it's not there, we notice the difference. Right? And the tick is going to give you that, initial transient that we get at the beginning. So again, this is a very basic type of rim shot. And the other one, the classic one, is going to be something like that. It's going to be simple, but we have a lot more controls. So just like on the previous one, this one works the same. We have a noise level, and for now I'm going to make sure that we stay on default. You have a noise level and a tick level. But this one is a little bit different because you have two oscillators. On the previous one, we cannot control the oscillators independently. On this one, we can do something like that. If I play it, notice that we get two main kind of a fundamental peaks on the spectrum. So it's going to be the oscillator number 1 and then the oscillator number 2. Now, this is the valence, how much of oscillator 1 or 2 you get. If I go all the way to the 1, we just get the oscillator number 1. And if I go to the 2, notice that this one sounds lower. Right? So by default, the 2 is going to be down in pitch and the 1 is going to be up in pitch. And what you need to do, you need to select the balance between them both, which one you want the most, the lower or the higher. Still, you have a tune control on the first and the second one. So if I wanted to stand on the second one and pitch it, maybe I'm going to go to the other one, and pitch it up or pitch it down, I can. And then, I can adjust the decay. Maybe that's just too much. Right? And notice how we can sweep the frequencies and even just, align them so we can get, a really cool sound. So, yeah, all of this is just tweakable. This is why this machine is super cool, because you can tweak the controls of both oscillators. Now, I'm going to go back to default for now. And maybe a little bit more decay. Now, right here, you get your noise, and just like the previous rim shot, is not super noisy, but you get it, You can go up in noise or down in noise, and you get your tick, which is your initial transient. And that's it. And then again, you can crush it with the overdrive. Now, this one has a lot more control than this one, but if you ask me, this one sounds like a rim shot, analog rim shot, drum machine rim shot, right out of the box. The other one is just a little bit more, I want to say exotic. It's just a little bit more controllable, and you can create other type of sounds, which is, that's the actual point. You can just, tweak the controls to make it sound like something else. All right, so let's keep moving forward. We are almost done with the analog ones. So I'm going to go to noise. Noise is just, super, super cool. So this can work as a noise generator, or you can filter the noise and create a motion. So you get your standard controls right here, this one and this one. You get your sweep time and your depth. For now, I'm going to go all the way down on this ones. I don't care. Maybe this one needs to stay at 0. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. I'm going to just leave it at 0. Remember that doing function is going to take you to, values, there you go. And if I play this, it's just going to be noise. So if I play it, the noise goes up and then goes down. So then you have your envelope control, which is the amp of the noise generator, is the attack and the decay. How fast is going to be decaying? Well, it's going to be the decay. So if I do something like this, it's going to be super short. If I make it long, it's going to take a long time to decay in volume, going down in volume. And then the other one is the attack is going to sweep up and then go down. Maybe the level is a little bit too much, so you can handle the level from here. And you're going to go down. Because, the noise is just sometimes too much. We have a lot of higher frequencies. So if you make it really smooth and then decay it, it's gonna, really go up, really slow, and then it's gonna take some time to go down. So this, again, is your amp control for this. So not only that, you get the filters. So if you wanted to chop the low frequencies, notice that we can chop them. And if you want, with the other controls, with the F and the G, you can chop the higher frequencies. And you even get a resonance control. So you can add a peak right there. It's a very cool noise generator. Now I'm gonna go to something a little bit faster, something like that. All right. So then what you get is going to be the S-dep and the S-team. So this one is the sweep time, and it's going to be the sweep depth. So maybe you've been watching and you're not starting on this section. The other generators, the other machines, they have these controls to modulate the pitch of whatever machine that we are using. But this is a noise generator. We don't have pitch, but we do have a cutoff. So this will make the cutoff modulate up or down or up, just like this. And I'm gonna maybe do something like that. I'm gonna do a little bit of attack, and then a little bit of decay, something like that. And I'm gonna go down in noise, volume. So when I play it, we can see that the peak of the resonance right there. And it goes up and then goes down. So this ones will decide how that modulation is gonna go. If I go all the way up on the sweep time, nothing is gonna happen because I'm not using this control. This one decides how far it goes up or down. If we go negatively, to the negative side of things, is going to modulate it. I need to press and hold. Just like that. Start sweeping from, down and then up. Right? Maybe I'm gonna reduce the attack. And go up in level. Now, if I go to the other side and I'm gonna go down in level, to the positive side is going to do the same thing, but it's going to modulate it up and then down. And we can see the sweep right there. Right? And again, the time is going to decide how fast the sweep is. I'm going to go to lower ones because it's just a little bit easier to hear. I'm going to go slow, all the way 0 on this one, and we get nothing. So, really fast. A little bit slower, and super slow. So that's it, that's the noise generator. And it's just not a noise generator. We just don't get, noise and we just filter. The fact that we can, modulate this with something, it's, really, really cool. Now, the next one is going to be the impulse. And this one is pretty simple. Now, the impulse is just going to be a short click sound. If I, again, stand right here and just play it, make sure that you have the default values. I'm going to play it. It's just going to be a click. Just a very short click. So this is an impulse. You might use it to trigger something, or maybe just to add a click to some other sound sources, some other machines. Pretty simple. Now, again, you might never use this one in your life. Right. But again, at the end of the day, this one is just going to be a tiny little impulse. Now, you can go up in level, and I'm going to just do that. And it is on the oscilloscope. It's just showing me, a version of this. And you have the polarity. You can go up, or you can go all the way down in polarity. Notice it changes the waveform. Maybe it's not so. Yeah, so maybe it's not showing. I will need to adjust the oscilloscope, but that's fine. So this one, the transient, the impulse is going to be up, and in this case, it's down. It's going to be down and then up. So it changes how the impulse works. Now then again, just you have the envelope, which is going to make it, sweep slower and decay faster or slower. Now, since this is an impulse, it's going to be very short. Right, so you can adjust this as much as you want, but still, it's going to be super short. That's the idea of an impulse. Now, one of the most common examples, I'm going to do something like that, is going to be going to the filter and maybe just sweep and add a little bit of resonance. and just, get a different tone, you can see how it's going on the spectrum. If you want to use an envelope, you can just generate this type of sounds. So again, but you might never use this in your life if you don't want to, right? It's just a different tool, another tool that you get. Alright, so let's talk about the synth sounds that we get on the analog section. We start with the Dual VCO. I'm going to say yes and make sure that everything is default. So as soon as you play this, you play it and it's going to be a constant sound. And it's because the decay right here is all the way open, so it works just like a standard synthesizer. If you play it, the oscillators will play and they will never ever stop. So when you're using the Dual VCO, you can just manage right here. We're going to talk about this in a second. But if I go to the amp, we can maybe use this as an ADSR type of, envelope. Maybe I can use an ADSR right here and then just use it as a standard ADSR controls for the, for the synthesizer. Maybe I can make the decay shorter and less release, and then it just works like a standard synthesizer. That's the idea. So if I go back to the synth, for now I'm just gonna keep it like that. Maybe I'm gonna go sustain all the way up but less release. So if I hold it and release it, we get that sound. So I'm gonna be going back to the synth. Now we have different controls. So we have an oscillator number 1 and an oscillator 2. We have 2 oscillators. And you can see it right there on the configuration. We're going to talk about this in a minute. So you get the 1 and you get the 2. And for now, I'm just going to go all the way down. We're going to scroll all the way down. And what you get is 2 sine waves. So if I play it, we just get 2 sine waves. Now, the oscillator number 1 and the number 2 are going to be detuned from each other by default. So this controls the tune of pretty much everything. Oscillator 1 and then oscillator number 2, right? So this is something that you need to know. Now the detune, the det, is going to detune the oscillator 2 only. So I can just move all this and just detune it, make it, offset it, and make that, type of, unison sound, or just, detune it to get different intervals. You can go all the way up to 16, all the way down to 16. I remember that doing funk is going to take you to different values, and you can use the chromatic mode, right, just to play the synth sound, and that's pretty much it. Now still we have a lot more, but this is the most basic part. You just set your waveform, and then you just detune it if you want, and then you need to decide the valence because you have 2 oscillators. I'm gonna go to this one and go. Maybe I'm gonna go all the way up. So going to this one is going to be oscillator number 1, and all the way right here is going to be the oscillator number 2. So you need to decide the blend of the oscillators, right? How much of the 1 and the 2 you want. All right. So this is the main controls. Now, then you get this one, which is the configuration. So maybe you're thinking, okay, so we get just pretty raw waveforms. Yes, but you have a combination of waveforms. So if I play it and I keep playing it, I'm gonna maybe do a 50% of both, and I'm gonna go down on this one. I'm gonna go 12. I'm gonna do it with function. All right. So I'm going to be playing it. We get the oscillator number 1 and the 2. Now this one will change the waveforms. Now the main difference is that the oscillator number 1 only gives you a sine and a sine saw. But the oscillator number 2 is going to give you a sine, a skewed sine, a triangle, a sine saw, and a saw. So the oscillator number 2 knows a lot more waveforms. How this works is that when you move this, the first oscillator is going to go through all the different combinations of oscillator number 2 and oscillator number 1. We go from a sine to a saw. This is actually a skew sine. This one is the skew sine. So it's sine, skew sine, then triangle. As we keep going up, notice that the oscillator number 1 always stays at the sine wave. We go to the sine saw, and then it's gonna be a saw. Now then, if you keep moving forward, now the oscillator number 2, remember it only knows 2 waveforms. So it's a sine. Now, as soon as we move this, is going to be a sine saw. So we start again, sine saw, a combination of sine saw and a combination of just a sine wave on the oscillator number 2. If we keep going up, we get, we go through all the different combinations of oscillator number 1 and oscillator number 2. Now, as soon as we cross this point, which is the last combination of the 1 and the 2 that we could do, which is two saws, we go to, this one is the last combination, we go and enter into the ring modulation world. So the oscillator number 1, now it's going to be modulated by the 2. And again, it's going to be ring modulation. So for now, I'm just going to do this. Now, if I go to the balance, if I go all the way to the 1, you're going to get that. Now, the 2 is ring modulating the first one. Maybe it's a little bit loud, I'm going to go down in volume. I go back to the synth. If I go to the number 2, notice that what the 2 is doing pretty much nothing. Is just a sine saw in this case. It's a skew sine wave. I'm going to go to a sine wave. So as I go to the other side, the other one is a sine, but we are ring modulating this. Now remember that when we use ring modulation, you get a cool sound when you offset the oscillators and the tuning of the oscillators, right? But this is what it means. The R, it means ring modulation, and is using the oscillator number 2 to ring modulate it. And then you just can do a combination of both, right? Now, as soon as we keep going up, you go through all the different combinations that you have available, just like, we have right here. We go to the combinations of ring modulation, and at some point, you're going to be entering into the FM world. So now the oscillator number 1 is going to be the carrier, and the oscillator number 2 is going to be the modulator, right? Just FM. And if I play it, it's going to sound like this. Now, what changes right here is going to be the balance. If I go to the oscillator number 1, notice that we get something pretty dull. It sounds almost like a sine wave, but still, there's something different. Now, if I go all the way to the other one, we get much more. So the important thing right here is going to be the balance, because now, since you have an FM type of synthesizer, oscillator, you have the carrier and the modulator. The modulator will never go out. You cannot hear the modulator. You only hear the carrier. So you cannot do valence. But the balance is going to work as a depth control. So if I play it and go all the way up, now we are getting the full depth of the 2 modulating the 1. If I go to the negative side, we just get, the waveform without frequency modulation. The carrier is not being modulated by the modulator. So this acts as a depth control. So this is depth all the way down. And as we go here, we get more depth, more frequency modulation, more, and all the way up. Now, right here again, you can choose different combinations. Now, the triangle is modulating the sine, and so on, and so on, and so on. Right. So pretty cool. Now, then what you get, if you keep moving forward, you keep going up, you get a combination of FM and ring modulation. So the 1, if I do this, something like this, the 1, if I go all the way 1, is going to be more the ring, and the 2 is going to be more the FM side. But you just do a combination, and you need to offset the oscillators. That way it's going to sound really cool. Right. Now, as you keep going up on this one, you're going to be getting more intensity because you have waveforms with more harmonics. So it's just going to get, a little bit louder. Right, so you can go really crazy with this. Now, it looks like a very simple synthesizer, a very simple, machine, but you do have a lot of power, frequency and ring modulation, frequency modulation, then just ring, and then, a combination of different oscillators. All right, so gonna start from the the default sound that we get, and you get a decay, and you get a decay too. So this decay, I'm gonna go to all the way to the 1. As soon as I play it, remember that we are using the amp. I can go all the way up in the amp and then go back to synth. And if I play it, it's just gonna constantly playing because there is no decay. So I can adjust the decay of the number 1, and when I re-trigger this, it's just gonna be we can control the decay within the machine and not the amp if we don't want to. Same thing with the number 2. If I go to the number 2 stays open. So if I make a blend between them both, we get the first one, and then the second one, it's constantly playing. But we can make it maybe a little bit longer when we play it, and then have the 2 decay a little bit slower. So we can, do a combination of this. Now this is super useful because this oscillator has FM. So remember that the modulator, the carrier, is going to be affected if the envelope of the modulator is different. So since right now we are modulating the oscillator number 1, which is completely open, but this one going all the way up on the decay is going to be changing how the modulator works. Maybe I can do a tiny little bit, and it is just completely different. I'm gonna go over there and do right, and if I keep it all the way open just like before, it's gonna be again constant. So again, all of this is just FM, the FM type of world. So you need to decide what you want to do with this. Now I'm gonna start again from with the default synth, with the default machine, and we get the default sound. And I'm gonna be going to the amp and doing a little bit of release. All right. So the next thing that you get is gonna be the overdrive. You can really crush it, but you have something right here called bend. So this would be like a type of glide or portamento. If I go up, notice that it's pitching. Now, since we go up clockwise, it's going to be pitching up, but if I go down, it's going to go down and up, and then up and down. Down and up, and up and down. It's like a, it's like a modulation. I want to say portamento. It's a modulation for the pitch. Now, you cannot decide the time. That would be cool. The time is fixed. So you can only decide how much up and how much down you go. That's the only thing you can do. Right, so hopefully you understood this one. It's a really cool, really cool machine, and you could do a bunch of things. Now, if you want something a little bit simpler, you can go to the synth or SY raw. This one is going to be a little bit more traditional. So you get 2 waves, and as you could guess, we get 2 oscillators. You can manage the waveform of the 1 and manage the waveform of the number 2. You get a tune. Now I'm going to be playing it. This is how it sounds. Remember, we are using an amp right here going down in the release. So the detune is going to be for the oscillator number 2, and this one is going to be pretty much the tune for everything, right? Just like the other one works. Maybe we can do a little bit of that unison vibe. Okay. Now, the main difference right here is that the level, you get a level, and the levels for the number 2. So maybe if I just want to use one oscillator, I go down level, and we just get the oscillator number 1, which is this one. All right? Pretty simple. But if you want the number 2, and I'm going to be detuning this 1 octave down, we get the oscillator number 2 and the oscillator number 1. And you can decide the level of the 2. Now, maybe you're thinking, okay, so we just get waveforms and that's it. Yeah, you do, but there's something else. You get a lot of waveforms, but for the oscillator number 1, you get 6 waveforms, and for the oscillator number 2, you get 7, right? So the waveforms are, it's going to be sine wave, then you get a sine, an asymmetric sine wave, then you get a triangle, and then, a sine saw, then a saw, and then a square. And then as you keep moving forward, we have the same ones, but remember you get the icon right there, which is the re-trigger, which is something that I didn't explain now that I remember. On this, we get the re-trigger right there. So, all right, so again, you get your sine, and your square is just the same waveforms. But again, these ones are going to be re-triggering, and these ones without the square or the anchor at the beginning are going to be free running. So again, I'm going to go all the way down and all the way down in this one. If I keep going up, we have the same waveforms, but we have a 7th waveform. So this 7th is going to be ring modulation. So we're going to use it to ring modulate the number 1. Now, for now, I'm just going to be, doing something like this. And it's very simple. You choose the oscillator for the oscillator number 1, the waveform for the oscillator number 1, and then the waveform for the oscillator number 2 if you just want to use it. And you just select your tune. And there you go. You have a synthesizer. Now, when you go to the ring one, this one, that is how it's going. So if I go all the way down, you're just getting the 1, right? So the 1, and then for now, I'm just gonna go all the way down on the on this ones. But on the number 2, I'm gonna use ring modulation. So as soon as I do so, and I'm all the way down in the level of the number 2. So this one is ring modulating the wave 1. So we don't get the number 2. What we get is going to be a sine wave. Maybe you can hear it right there at the back. Gonna go up, down. We don't get it. We get a low tone. If I go all the way down, we can really hear that. If we go down, right? So we are modulating it with still, we are modulating this with the oscillator number 2. That's, how it works. Alright, again, just ring modulation. Alright, so then what you get is a noise, just like with any cool classic synthesizer, and you get the decay, but only for the number 2. You don't get the decay for the number 1. So this is actually something cool because you can, use both oscillators. Just maybe do something like that. Maybe I'm going to go to a saw, something like that, a sine and a saw. And when I play it, maybe I'm going to go down in this one. When I play it, I'm going to be getting both, but then the oscillator number 2 is going to decay way before the wave number 1. So I'm getting the sine wave, and I'm getting the saw at the beginning when I trigger, but then it just decays down. So this is going to give you different tones. Is not the same as, right? So you get a lot more bite when you press the triggers because you're using the saw. But then if you hold it, you get just the sine wave. It's just completely up to you. You can still disable this and use it normally, because usually on classic synths, you don't have a way to control the decay of the second oscillator, right? Or the first, or the decay of different oscillators. You just don't get that. It's just very uncommon. You get it in some synthesizers, but it's not very common. So the fact that you can do it right here is just super cool. And then again, we already talked about this. You get the noise level. If you want some noise, you can get it, and you can just crush it as hell. Okay, standing on the first of the digital ones, I'm gonna make sure that this page is, cleared and back to the default sound. So this is going to be a bass drum, right? And some of the controls, we already know them if you watch the analog section. So you get your tune control, so you can change the tune of your bass drum function, and by moving this, we just can control, the different pitch. Now, if I go all the way down on this ones, and maybe I'm going to go all the way down on this and all the way down on this, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Then you have your decay, which is going to be how long your kick is going to be. And then you have your pitch sweep. So this will, if I go all the way down, we can see the fundamental of your bass drum right there. So we need a little bit of sweep just to make it sound a little bit more natural. If I go up, we can see the sweep, and as we keep going up, we're just gonna get, more noticeable and noticeable and noticeable. And you can go really up, right? Right. So pretty simple controls. Again, if you watch the analog section, all of this is just super simple. Now you get a punch, and this one is a new one. So the punch, what it will do, it will add distortion. It will distort the sound. So if I play it, if you take a look at the oscilloscope, we just get a sine wave. It's a very smooth kick. So when I turn this on, it's going to change that sine wave to something really crushed. It's going to chop pretty much everything. So now it just looks like a square wave, right? So this is what the punch is going to do, is a distortion. Now this could be called distort instead of punch, but they went with punch, so that's fine. But this distorts, just crushes everything. Up to here you have the main control, and then of course you get your overdrive, which is a little bit, way different than distortion. Notice that we are just not clipping and chopping the sound. So then you get the other controls, which are going to be the S mod, then the T mod. So this one is going to be a square mod. And it's essentially what it does is going to modulate the fundamental tone with some, frequency modulation. And he's going to do it with a square, and this one is going to do it with a triangle and some feedback. So first I'm going to be going here. Now the envelope really matters because the envelope controls how the modulator will modulate the, the default sound, the carrier. So if we do something short, then I'm going to maybe do something like that. So I'm going to be playing it, and we get something, very simple, something like that. Now, as soon as I go up on this one, you're going to see that we are introducing some frequency modulation, so the kick is going to start going really aggressive because we have a lot more harmonics with the square. And again, as we go up, now we get a much more, much more aggressive kick. Okay, so if I play it, now we can see on the oscilloscope, it's kind of a freezing the sound. This is what we get when we go really up. This is like the waveform of the kick. As I go down, it's going to be a little bit mild, It's not going to modulate it so hard. Still going to do it, but not that hard. So this is the part where we need to talk about the envelope. The envelope will decide how that modulation will affect, the oscillator number one, the main sound, the carrier. So if I make it the envelope really short, it's going to affect the initial part of the waveform. Because as I keep going down, it's just affecting the first part, and then everything else gets, still remain smooth. But if I make it really hard, it's just gonna do everything super hard. So this is a tiny, a nice way to control the initial part of the kick if you want to really distort it, and then everything else stays smooth, the tail of the kick. Now I'm gonna go down on this one, and then we need to talk about the T mod. Now the T mod is the same as this one. We use modulation, but this one is gonna do it with a triangle. And for now, I'm just gonna go all the way up on the envelope. So when we go up, it's the same process in this one, but now instead of doing it with the triangle, with the square, we do it with a triangle, right? And we can see it right there. Now on this one, at some point when we cross over, we do too much, it's going to start doing more and more, and we introduce feedback. This has feedback built into this, and when we do too much feedback, we get noise. It's gonna be really noisy. But if you go down, you just use a triangle as a modulator. Going all the way up is triangle with feedback. Completely different. Now still, if you manage this, with the envelope, it's not gonna go super aggressive. You're just gonna get it at the beginning and not so much at the end. Right? Now, this is a really cool machine, really versatile machine, because you can choose a triangle, you can use feedback, you can do square, and then you get your envelope, so you can really tailor a kick and just build the kick that you want. Now if we keep moving forward, I'm gonna go to the SD, and now we are standing on the snare drums, right? And that's how it sounds. I'm gonna make sure that everything is just default. So it's going to be the snare sound. Now, right here at the bottom, these ones are the modulators, and they are doing some modulation just like, the other machine we just discussed, the BD Modern. So on this one, I'm going to go all the way down on this one, and all the way down on this, right? It's going all the way down. And if I play it, now it's going to be very simple. You can change the tune as much as you like. With function, you're going to be adjusting it by octaves. And then your sweep, it works just like the kick. You decide how much that sweep is going to be. We can really hear it now. You can go all the way up, and we can see that sweep. Now we can adjust the decay, so we can really hear it. Again, you just need to fine tune it to your fundamental, and maybe it's too much. Now your punch is going to distort the sound. Right? So far, it's just a very standard control. Now, the thing is that with the snare, you need your fundamental tone, and then you need some kind of a noise. So this is going to be this section. Make sure that this one is all the way down. I'm going to talk about that one in a minute. So this one, it's MDFB. It's modulation feedback. All right, MDFB, modulator feedback. So if I go up on this one, we're going to start, getting that noise that we want. And if you go too much, it's going to be, pretty aggressive. So this is the feedback of the modulator. We are doing modulator. We are modulating this by default, but adding feedback will give us that noise. Now this will control how much of the modulator will affect the carrier. So if I go down, or go all the way up, it's going to be really long, right? So maybe I just want to make it really short. And it's just going to be a lot, a lot less aggressive. Really long, much more punchy. Right. So you need to adjust this to taste. Now I'm going to go all the way down on the feedback so we can remove the noise and we can see what's going on right here. And I'm just going to make the decay super long. Now, so this one is the inharmonicity or something like that. That's, how it calls. So this one, what we will do, it will change the ratios, the relationship between the operators, the modulator and everything else. So the thing is that it's kind of weird to explain. What this does behind the scenes is going to detune it. Think of this as a detune. So all the way down, everything sounds super harmonic. Right? Everything is on the same place. I'm going to remove the punch. Now going all the way up, still, everything sounds super harmonic, but notice that the timbre changes. Now, in all the in-betweens, it will not sound so harmonic. But this changes the timbre. So now you can use this as a timbre control. Right? But this is how it works. So by default, again, this is a snare. So if I go to the default values, you need to adjust how much of that noise you want, the amplitude of the noise. And then if you want to change the timbre, you just do it from here. You want to adjust your decay, you can do it. And then the sweep. And that's it, that's how it works. You can give it a little bit more punch and just get it, get it to work. If you want shorter. So a really cool machine, especially for the inharmonicity. This one really tailors the sound of whatever it is that you're trying to do. All right. Okay, so the next one is going to be the vintage one. I'm going to stand there and just clear it so we can have, the default values. And if I play it, it's going to sound like this. Now, same as before, we have pretty much the same controls. If you notice, maybe you're going to need to watch the SD basic first. This is pretty much the same controls. So all of them, the BD modern, the basic, and the vintage are going to be siblings. They're just siblings. So again, I'm going to go there. We have the tune. We can change the tune if we wanted to. We can have I'm going to go down on this once, and I'm going to, let you know what's going on right here in a minute. If we play it, we just get, the kind of the fundamental. Still doing a modulation right here, but we get the fundamental. We get the sweep. Right there is the fundamental. If I move up in the sweep, maybe I'm going to go up in decay. we can hear that sweep. The punch is gonna add distortion, but so far, super simple. It's pretty much the same thing we've been using with the other machines. I'm gonna keep the decay around there and less pitch sweep. So the inharmonicity is going to work just like the other one. I'm gonna talk about this later. Now, right here on this machine, this one is going to be the complexity. It's called frequency complexity. What is doing behind the scenes? I have no idea. Now, it's always some kind of modulation, phase distortion, or feedback, or something with noise. It's always something like that. What is specifically doing? I don't know. It doesn't say on the manual, and it could be anything really. But this is what it does. It's going to really crush it. You notice that you get a really noisy sound. So that's what I'm telling you. It could be anything. And it's called complexity. And, it goes from not so complex sound to a much more complex sound. That's pretty much how it works. And right here, you just manage your envelope. How much of this you want to do. Right? Just like the other one. And then you get the inharmonicity. But this one, you're going to be changing the timbre. Maybe I'm going to go all the way down this one. That is that maybe I'm going to add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. The news that the ratios is changing the timbre just a little bit. Maybe I'm going to go up in this one. There we go. So it changes the timbre. This is what it does. And I can recommend that you maybe watch the SD Basic to really understand what's going on right here. Right. So pretty simple. I feel like I don't need to explain. This one works just like the other one. The only difference is that it's a different type of modulation and a different type of sound source. And again, all of them are just siblings. They do something different, but maybe the oscillator, the fundamental is going to change, and then the type of modulation is going to change. But the controls are pretty much the same. The next is going to be PC Carbon. And again, this one is just like the other ones. The vintage is doing this type of modulation. The basic is doing feedback, and it's just pretty much the same thing. This one is going to do a square or a triangle. So with the PC Carbon, what it does is a more linear type of modulation, right? It's just an FM. So if I go all the way down, you're going to be able to hear the fundamental. Right, and notice that the tune changes as well. It's going really down in tune. Now we can go up if we wanted to, but I'm gonna keep it down for now. Now we can make the decay really long. And as soon as you play this, notice that the modulators or the operators are just pretty much in the same space. So we get that. Yeah, we get that. So what we can do with this one, again, is the sweep. We already talked about this. If I remove it, there's no sweep. If I go up in sweep, we can see the separation between them. And it's very mild. It's not going to go crazy. And the punch is going to add distortion. Now, I'm still gonna stay on default for now. Right? And I'm going to go up in decay. So with this one, we do more modulation. If I remove it, we get less. But if I go up, we get a lot more harmonics. We get a lot more. With this one, we can go really up. And we just turn this into its own thing. If we go up in pitch, we could use this as something else. And all the machines can do this, right? And maybe you can just turn it into something else. Now, if I go down in the mod depth, you get something very mild. Now, remember that with this, we just offset the operators, the ratios of the operators. So if I keep moving this, we're going to start separating them. So we can see right there on the spectrum, if I move them, then I'm just offsetting the ratios. So with this, we get, different timbres and we get different sounds because it's just on a different place. The operators have a different ratio relationship. And again, just doing all of this, maybe I'm gonna go all the way up, do something like that. That's how it sounds. Now, all of this is just meant to be percussive. So going down in the decay and the envelope, we are going to be getting something percussive. Now, if you go all the way down, you just get the main tone and the separation with the inharmonicity. If I go all the way down, it's pretty much nothing. All the way up, we really separate them. And you add the harmonics in between. Right, so again, all of this is just depends on what you want to do. But now, since you understand the controls a little bit better, it's just, a little bit easier to do sound design. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Moving forward, we have the CP Vintage. Now, this one is super cool. Now, this is a little bit different than the other ones now. If you go to the PC Carbon, it's pretty much the same as the CP Vintage, as the Basic, and as the, the BD Modern. They're pretty much the same. Now, this one is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go and stand there. So right from the start, we get the body, we get a balance, and we get a spacer. Now, but still, we have the punch. It's going to do the same. If I play this, it's some claps, right? Right. So we still have the punch. If we turn it on, it's going to bring distortion. If we want to adjust the decay, it's going to make the claps a lot longer. Now, this machine has two main parts. It has a noise part and it has an FM part. Now, if I go to the valence, which is this one, is going to be noise all the way down. And if I go all the way to the other side, it's going to be the main tone, the FM tone. Just, again, the main tone. So the combination of them both is going to give you the claps. It's going to give you the initial, the basic tone, and then the noise, and which is gonna be resulting in a clap, right? So the different parts will affect, the valence and whatever it is that you do right here. Now the body is for the FM part, for this part, and if I play it, when I go up in the body, it's gonna be changing. It's gonna be changing the modulation all the way down. Less modulation. It sounds a little bit darker. And if I keep going up, it's going to be more dense, and at some point, we get a lot more harmonics because we are doing more. Now, still, the envelope is going to control how much of this you do. If I go down on the envelope, we just do a tiny little bit. So you would be adjusting this to change the tone of the FM part, not the noise, right? Okay, so I'm gonna make it a little bit longer. Now, then you have the other one, which is gonna be the noise side. So I'm gonna maybe go to the noise side, and I'm gonna, for now, stand right there. Now, so right here you have something called spacer. Now, what this will do, maybe I'm gonna go all the way down on the mod and all the way down on this one. And I'm just gonna stand, made a mistake. Let me go back to the beginning. There we go. I'm gonna go all the way down in valence. So I'm just getting the noise part. So if I go to the space and I really go all the way down, notice what happens. So we get a clap, right? But the claps is like 3 claps. We get 1 clap, 2 clap, and then a third clap. So it's like playing a clap through a very short delay. So this is what the spacer is going to do. It's going to separate the 3 claps. As I go to the center, it's going to bring them closer, and they stand right in the same spot. Still, there's a little bit of separation there. But, it's pretty much the same spot. Now, when you cross over and you go to the other side, notice that it's the same thing, but it's like noise there. Well, that's going to be bit crush. It's gonna crush the claps, and going all the way up, is the same separation that we had before. The first, the first one, the second one, and the third one, but we are bit crushing them. But it's the same thing and than doing this, but with bit crush. That's how it works. So you just need to find, or whatever it is that you want to do right here, bring a blend with your original tone and maybe just tailor your clap to whatever you want to do, with the balance. Okay, so right from the start, if you go to default, it sounds like a clap. So you just can use this and adjust the separation and the decay. And just, you don't need to touch all the other controls. But still, you can if you wanted to. Now I'm going to go to the next one. And the next one, it's going to be the alloy one. And it's a cymbal, right? So I'm going to make sure that I'm standing on the default settings. And again, it's a cymbal. So it's going to sound like that. Now you can adjust the decay. Right now it's super short. If I make it super long, it sounds like, really aggressive, the high frequencies. And it's supposed to be like that because it's a cymbal, right? Makes sense. So you have this main controls. You have the shim, radio, and mod. And these ones are the ones that will modify the sound. So you have two sources, the A and the B. Now I'm going to be going down in radio. I'm going to go down in mod. And I'm going to go down in shim. If I play this, that's the fundamental sound. That's what we get. Now, the two sources, the A and the B, are going to be changed in some fashion. Now, the shim is going to offset the tune of the B, of the A. So if I move it, notice that it's changing the pitch. It's going higher and lower. Now the radio is going to be the tune of the B. So if I do something like that, it's changing the ratio of the B. And just like this, you just need to tailor the timbre of whatever is that cymbal that you're trying to create. Now, right now it's just super long, the decay. I'm going to do something like that. Going up in pitch of the A and then the B. All right. Pretty simple, right? So the A and the B. Now then you can do mod. So the mod, of course, is going to bring a lot more to the table because you're doing modulation, frequency modulation. And the envelope is going to decide how that modulation is going to happen. If you want to do just a tiny little bit, or you want to go, all the way in. All right, so pretty cool cymbal generator. Now, this can create a lot of different sounds, not just this, right? Since you can go up in tune, you can go really up or really down. And you can even use it as something else. Now, it's a really cool engine. Okay, so we finally begin with the synth sounds of the digital engine. I'm going to go to the first one. It's going to be the bits. And this one, it's super simple. All the oscillators are really simple. The things that they do, very different things. So on this one, we get the bit crush, then we get the sample reduction. So on this one's for now, I'm going to go all the way down. We are not going to use them. So you get pretty much two oscillators, right? And both oscillators will use the same waveform. So what you get is pretty much three different sources. You get noise, you get oscillator number 1 and oscillator number 2. Now you choose your waveform right here. You can use a triangle, go all the way from from a sine wave to a triangle, and so on to a saw and a square. Now, the cool thing with this one, which is something that we couldn't do so far, is going to be adjusting the width of the pulse. So now we can, if we modulate this maybe with an LFO, we can do pulse width modulation. Now, we cannot do it from here. We need to go to the LFO and modulate this manually. With the LFO, not manually. But yeah, we get pulse width modulation, which is, again, something that we didn't have so far. So I'm going to be standing maybe on a triangle. If I play it, it's going to sound something like that. Notice it sounds very noisy. And it's because, again, told you that this has a noise section, an oscillator 1 and 2, and this is the balance. So if you go all the way to the noise, you're just getting noise. Now, as soon as you go to the other way, you start getting a combination of noise and oscillator number 1. And as soon as you go further, you are just going to start to get oscillator 1 and oscillator number 2. Now, the oscillator number 2 is going to be completely detuned. So by going up, you're going to be getting it. Now you can get it close to the oscillator number 1, just like that. And you can use the functions so you can detune it by some amount. And that's it. Right here you have your decay. You can go all the way up to inf, and as soon as you play it, it will never shut up. And if you want to, just like we did with the analog, synth sounds, we can just maybe go to the amp. I'm going to use the standard ADSR and just, adjust it from there. So when I trigger now, it's going to only play, when I play it. So if I go back to the synth, you can do this from here, or you can adjust the decay from this control and make it really plucky. In this case, I'm going to keep it all the way up. So remember, we have the source, which is this one. We can use the balance to select oscillator 2 and 1, or maybe just the 1 and noise. And then we can detune the number 2 to different frequencies. Now, the tune will pretty much rule the tune for both oscillators. So always the detune of the number 2 is going to be in relationship with the tune of the oscillator number 1, right? So that's how it works on pretty much all the different machines. So if you think about this, you can select your waveform. You just can select if you want to want noise, how to tune your different oscillators, and that's it. You have your overdrive, and you can adjust your decay from here. So that's it, pretty simple device. Now this one calls bits for a reason. Now you can use it as a standard kind of an oscillator or synthesizer. Now then you get the SRR, which is going to be the sample rate reduction. It's just going to be, I'm going to go to something a little bit more nicer. There you go. So you get your sample rate. That's why it's called bits. If I go to the other one, it's going to be the bit rate reduction. You can do a little bit of both and just get, different sounds. Now you can go to chromatic. And you get something, get something crazy. So you can use it as a standard, synthesizer, or just, go crazy with the other controls. All right, so let's keep moving forward. The next start of the show is going to be the chords. So this one is fantastic. Now you have 3 different parts on this one. So you have a wavetable synthesizer, right? That's the first thing that you get. Then you get a unison generator. You can use unison, or you can do chords. Now, as usual, you get your punch. We already talked about this. At this point, I believe I don't need to explain this. You can adjust your punch if you want to distort your decay. You cannot go all the way up, but by default, it's just gonna stay all the way up. We are doing, if I remove the release, if I play it, it's going to stay very sustained. Still is going down because the chords has an independent envelope with this one, amp envelope, and a filter. So by default, we are just going down in filter. So if I go all the way down in the filter, it's pretty sustained. So I'm going to keep the filter all the way up and the amp all the way up, and I'm just going to manage this with the amp envelope. So right here, you have your wavetable. If I go all the way down, it's just going to be a sine wave, right? As I move up, we sweep through the wavetable and the different positions of the wavetable. Really cool. Now, what you can do, since this holds basic waveforms, by doing funk and moving this, is going to take you through the, the basic waveforms really fast. So it's a square, triangle, and a tri-saw. Sine saw in this case. Right? So function is going to do that for you. And then you just can, maybe find something that you like. I'm going to stay on that one. Okay. So then you have the other side, and it's going to be the type, and it's going to be the balance. So the type, it's what you want to do. You want to do a unison, or you want to do chords. Now going all the way down is going to be unison. So if I play it, it's going to be unison. And if I keep going up, it's going to be 3 voices or unison. We're going to talk about how to tune this. Then it's going to be 4 voices of unison. And if I keep going up, we enter into the chords. So we do a minor and major, and you have a million chords to choose from. You have a million chords. Now, just like the balance, just like the wave, what you can do funk, and this is going to take you to minor, major, sus4, sevenths, and the most common chords, So you can easily stand on a chord, because again, this gives you a bunch of weird chords. So doing the funk, it's just a little bit easier. Now for now, I'm just gonna go all the way back to unison. If I play it, it doesn't sound that good. It just sounds a little bit weird. So maybe I'm gonna stand on a basic waveform, just like a triangle. Now this doesn't sound like a unison. Now the balance has to do something with this. This one is going to decide how much unison you do. If I go all the way down, they are pretty much on the same spot. But as I keep going up, we start getting, maybe I'm going to go to square so we can have something more, there we go, something more powerful. As I keep going up, we start to separate the voices, and we get, more. Right? And if you go way up, you're just getting not unison, they're just separating all the voices. I'm gonna keep it down, and there you go, you have unison. Now you can use up to 4 unisons. Let me go to square. Right, super cool. Right? Now, if I keep going up, we enter into the chord world. We get out of the unison world, and we get into the chords. So as soon as I play it back, I'm gonna go balance all the way down, right? So balance is all the way down. So we get one single tone. As I keep going up, it's gonna bring the 3rd, and the 5th, and so on. Now, it's a minor chord, so we don't have a 7th. Now I'm gonna be going to a 7th chord. Right. So if I stand in the 7th, we get it. So we get the first one, the 3rd, the 5th, and it's minor 3rd. Of course, before you say anything on the comments. And then it's the 5th, the 7th. Now, as we go up, this is going to give you inversions. So the 3rd is playing below the root. And as you keep going up, the 3rd and the 5th is below the root, and the 7th is below. So this gives you inversions. As I keep going up, it's going to give you inversions and variations. As I keep going up, it's just a little bit different, but if I keep going up, again, it's going to take them to higher octaves. So if you think about this, this is really cool. You can do a lot of things. You can do unison, variations, inversions, chords. Really great. Now, is there an easier way to do this? Because doing all this scrolling just drives you nuts. So just like we did with the other ones, by doing function is going to take you to through the different variations of this. We're going to go up, then we get the 3, then we get the next variation, the next, and notice it right there at the bottom, it says inversion 3, inversion 2, root, and then up, and so on, and so on, and so on. So yeah, really, really, really cool. So now the only thing you need to do is just to find whatever balance that you want, find the waveform that you want. Maybe if you want a little bit of envelope, filter envelope is gonna, go down. Maybe you want a more plucky sound. Maybe you want a little bit of overdrive or maybe punch. Maybe that's too much. And that's it, you just fine tune whatever sound that you wanted. And that's it, you're just gonna get it. Now, also remember by doing funk and going, I was up here, going all the way down to 0, type 0, is gonna give you just one single tone. So you can play that. Now, notice I'm playing a chord. I'm just playing multiple keys at the same time. So since this is a chord generator, it will not let you play multiple keys at the same time. You cannot do this from here. That will be cool, but you cannot, All right, so I'm going to go to the next one, and it's SY tone. Now, this is an FM take of a machine. The other ones are more classic and traditional, but this one is an FM. We have the normal one. I wouldn't say normal, the normal analog synthesizer. We have the wavetable, and this is going to be the FM. So the amp is all the way open. I'm going to go back to synth. And this decay is gonna work more like a release. If I play it, it's gonna sustain it, but when I release, it's gonna take a long time to die. So the decay, you just need to adjust it. So when I release it, it dies earlier or not. Right, so this is how it works. I'm maybe gonna go all the way up. Now then you get your punch and your overdrive, and at this point I believe we already kind of covered this section. Now I'm gonna go all the way up on this one, and notice that this is going to be the modulation envelope. It's because we are doing frequency modulation. With what? With this section. And I'm gonna go all the way down in feedback and all the way down in the mod depth. So if I play it, we just get a single tone, a sine wave. Right? This is just going to be almost like a sine wave. Let me just, fix the oscilloscope because it's kind of stuck. There you go. Just a little bit better. So we just get the sine wave. So we are doing no modulation with this controls. So when we want to do modulation, we are going to be going up in this one. And this is how much frequency modulation we are going to be doing. Notice that we are starting to get overtones. As soon as we go up, we keep going up, we get more harmonics, more and more. Right? Pretty simple. Now on the FM world, you have the feedback, which is going to be this one. Going to stay around there. So if I go down on the feedback, we have nothing. But as we go up, we start to get more, and at some point, we cross the noise. We start to get noise. All right. So this is how how it works in FM. Now then, I'm going to go all the way down in feedback. I'm going to maybe stay right there. So then what you get is your main tune, which is going to be changing the tune for pretty much everything. And I'm going to stand maybe around there. Then you have your ratio. Now the ratio is for the modulator, right? It's going to change the ratio of the modulator. And by moving this, it's going to offset the ratio. And if you're standing on not very harmonic values, it's just going to sound, a little bit weird. That's how it works. Now, by doing funk, you can go to more fixed values. But still, you need to dial the right ratio just to get what you want. Maybe I'm going to go there. Now, the modulation envelope will affect how the modulator is going to be modulating the carrier. So if I go down and make it a little bit plucky, it's going to be, way pluckier. If I keep going up, the modulator will affect the carrier a little bit more. And we get, more harmonics in this case. A more sustained sound with the harmonics, let's say. Right, so I believe at this point, all of these controls are just pretty simple. Right, so we have the modulator that will affect the carrier. If we don't want to modulate it, nothing is going to happen. we decide how aggressive we want to be. If we want to have a little bit of feedback, and if we want to go really aggressive with the envelope or not. So the ratios will change the ratio relationship and will affect the carrier by a lot. Right, so this sounds like a really, good cool, FM bass. Right, so the next is going to be the toy. I'm gonna go to the toy. So this machine is a little bit special. Now, is a take on a very specific type of synthesis. Is more dedicated to replicate more kind of natural sounds, let's say. Now, if you own a micro freak or mini freak or maybe plates, maybe you should be very comfortable with this because it's just something like that. Now, the controls are a little bit complicated to explain, and instead of giving you the technical description, I will use how it sounds description. You can go to the manual. It gives you a more technical explanation, but it's still pretty vague on the explanations right there in the manual. So, okay, so we get the punch. This is the distortion. We already know how it works. And this is how it sounds. So the main point of this is to create more natural, I want to say percussive, it's just percussive to strings type of sounds. Now the decay will just change pretty much everything. Now the form is the most important control. It's going to change the timbre and it's going to just make it sound like something else. So this one affects the ratio. Now as I keep going down, the timbre is going to keep changing and we go from something that sounds like a xylophone to something different all the way to strings. So maybe plugged strings is going to be something like that. Right, so that's going to be like a string. If you keep going up, it's going to sound like something else, right? So this is the main vibe of this machine. I would use it to create, very kind of plucky sounds. Right. Now, then you have the imp and you have the bright. Imp is going to be the impact. Now, this will make the sound more dense. I'm going to go to the string type of sound. Something like that. Now, the imp, again, makes everything more dense. So I'm going to keep playing it. As I keep going up, it's going to bring more harmonics. You can see that right there on the spectrum. We have a few. And as I keep going up, it's just going to bring more density. And at some point, it brings that feedback, which is noise. Now, this depends on what you're doing on the form. It's going to sound super bright. So the bright lets you adjust all this. It's going to be a lot darker. And I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go all the way up on this one. Now you can see the real nature of this. So the bright, all the way down, it's going to make it dark. If I go up, notice it tends to sound super, super bright. Depends on what you're doing on the impact and on the form. This one is going to help you to tame it a little bit better. And this one is the envelope, right? So all the way up is just way open. But if we want something more plucky, which is, again, I believe is the nature of this machine, maybe you just need to use this control to make it a little bit more plucky. Again, all of this just sounds really cool. Is the only machine that will give you this type of sounds. If I go to the amp, maybe a little bit of delay and reverb. Right? So you cannot get sounds like this with the other ones. This is why I'm telling you, this one is really special. Gives you a very specific sounds. So when you want this type of sound, you need to go to this one. Okay, so the next machine that we have on this device is going to be the last one. Thank God, it is going to be the Swarm. Now, this is the Elektron take on a supersaw. So you have several voices at the same place. These are all the voices that you get, and they are detuned. And when you detune them, you get the big sound. So I'm gonna maybe go a little bit down in level because this is gonna get really loud. So still you get your decay. You can go all the way up and sustain it. Now, if I'm not using the envelope, it's just gonna sustain it, but you can manage it from here if you wanted to, right? So right here, this is the main start of the show. This is the detune and the mix. So the mix, I'm gonna keep it all the way up. Now the detune is gonna detune the different voices that you get. Going all the way separated, all the way up is detuning the voices from each other way too much. But if you keep them closer, at some point they're gonna be super close. Almost sound like one. Almost. Right? So right here you just detune your voices in a more natural way. And for now I'm just gonna go all the way down on the anim, and on this one I'm gonna go all the way down. Really separated, really narrow. Now then you need to choose which one you want to hear the most. Right here you have the fundamental one. Right there is the first one, the one in the center. The other ones are the other voices that are being detuned. Now the mix is gonna help you decide which you want the most. If you want this or you want all at the same level. And you cannot, go up on this one and then down on the main. You can get more of the center one and then go down in the level of the copies, or just, bring and use everything at the same level. It's just completely up to you. Now, this is going to, the main idea of this is several voices detuned. So how it's detuned depends on what you have right here at the bottom. And it's going to be the end mod and the anim. So the end mod is noise. And it's going to use noise to detune the voices. So if I play something and I go here and I keep going up, notice that it gets pretty noisy at some point. So it's using noise to detune the voices. Or the other copies, the different sauce that we get right there. Now, since noise is a very unpredictable sound source, it's gonna get, a little bit more unpredictable. Now, when you do too much, you start hearing the noise. And it depends on what you want to do. Now, I'm gonna go all the way down. Now, then you have the anim. Now, the anim is a little bit different. It doesn't use noise. It uses an LFO. Now, it's going to separate the voice in pairs. And each pair will get an LFO. And all the LFOs are going to go at different rates. So that's how, the anim is going to detune it. I'm going to maybe stand right there. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go up. And as I go up, you can see the movement, you hear it. And at some point, if you go way too much, it's going to give you the beehive type of crazy sound. And if you can use the noise to make it even more notorious. Right? So super different. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole, the whole machine. Now, the last control is going to be this one. It's going to be the sub. Now, the sub is going to detune by octaves, and you can see the octaves right there. But this one will detune the center one, not the copies. So if I go, this is detuning the one at the center, the fundamental. If I go down, it is 2 octaves down, 1 octave down, 0, 1 or 2. Right, so that's it. That's how it works. Now you still, you get your overdrive if you wanted to, and your decay, and whenever you detune it, it's gonna detune it to whatever is that you have right there. Really cool machine, and I guess this one this was a machine that we got an update, the latest update of the firmware of this device. Okay, so we are pretty much done. The only thing left is the number 12. And I'm not gonna go really crazy because I believe that this guide was too long already. And you already know how all the sounds work and how all this, how all of them, all the digital works. So, these ones are pretty simple, are just pretty simple. So I'm gonna be going to synth and I'm gonna go all the way up. And notice that we have a few, and maybe you're thinking, dude, this is going to take a long time because you have a lot. Well, no, they're really simple. So you just cannot do much on most of them. So the first one is going to be, if I go there, it's going to be the CH Classic. If I play it, it's just going to sound like that. Can you do much? No. You just can go up in the decay. And that's it. Now, then you have the N call. So this is the noise color. This will change the color of the noise that it's using behind the scenes. And that's the only thing you can do. Now, when you go to the synths, if it says CH is a close hi-hat. Now then you have the other one, which is going to be the OH Classic. This is an open hi-hat, but it's just going to do the same. You're going to use pretty much the same engine. Now the thing is that it's going to be an open hi-hat. Just going to have a different, it's going to sound differently. Again, you can adjust your decay to make it really long, or you just can make it shorter, and the end call is going to change the color of the noise. And again, that's the only thing that you can do on this one. So the next category is going to be the same, but it's going to be the metallic ones. And again, it's close hi-hat and open hi-hat. If I go to the close hi-hat in the metallic, it's even less. You can do it even less. But the thing is that this one, since it has a very particular sound, it sounds very metallic. The only thing you can do on this one is just change the decay. That's all. And then of course the tune, but I guess you already know that. And they sound very metallic. So again, it's just a very particular sound. And the other one, the open hi-hat, there we go. I'm gonna be playing it. It's just longer, and it has a different tune, a different timbre. Now, the next one is going to be the HH, the hi-hat basic. Now, on this one, we have a lot more control because it's just, hi-hat. So it's not closed nor open. So we have a lot more control. Now, on this one, we can control the tone, right? So it goes to higher frequencies. And notice that on the spectrum, you can see the peak right there, that we are fine-tuning this. So you can just choose where you want to peak, where you want your fundamental, your main tone. Now this one has a, it has a transient. So this will decide how long the transient, that initial, hit of the hi-hat is going to be. It's going to be. If I make it really short, we get that. Now we can make it longer, but we are making longer the tail, not the hit. If I go up in the hit is going to be longer. So behind the scenes, this machine has 6 oscillators playing the same spot, pretty much working the same machine. Now the 6 oscillators are going to be working at the same time. So what you have right here is the RST. So this is the reset. Since you have 6 oscillators, it's by default they are going to be resetting or not when you trigger. So by default is it's going to be off. So the oscillators won't reset when you play the hi-hat. Now if you turn it on, it's going to reset the oscillators. So it's like a free running or not free running. So the only difference is that the phase is going to change a little bit. That's all. So on this one, again, it's just you have a lot more control. So you can just create a hi-hat, fine-tune it, or create an open hi-hat and then just fine-tune it with the tone. So you have a lot more control than the other ones. The other ones is just use what you have available and be happy. But with this one, you just can tweak a little bit more. So the next ones are going to be the CY and the classic one and the metallic one. Now these ones are cymbals, right? And again, you don't have a lot of saying. If I play this one is going to sound like a, it's going to sound like a cymbal. So you can change the tune, you can change the tone. Now notice that when we play it, you have this splash at the end. So if you make it really narrow, you can have the main tone, like the main peak right there, but less of in the background, less of the splash. If I get more to the other side, we get a lot more splash. You still get the transient, the fundamental, but then we get the splash. So you need to use the decay to control it a little bit better. Now the end call is going to be the noise color, so we can just change the color right here. Right, so again, just pretty simple. You don't have a lot of control, but this one is really important. Depends on this, depending on this one, your cymbal is going to sound way different. Now the other one is going to be the metallic, and it has the same idea, but it has that metallic sound that we had on the other one, right? So we can change the tone to something completely different. Now remember that we have the decay. We can make it really long. I don't really not like this one, but it's completely up to you. It's not about my opinion. Now then you have your transient decay. Make it longer or make the transient shorter. Maybe I'm gonna go there. And then you can just adjust the decay. But this one is nice. I just don't like it that much, how it sounds. I'm just gonna keep moving forward. Now then you have the CY right. Alright, so this one, the right one, you have a lot more controls. And it's a pretty cool. I think it's the best of all the, this analog section. So when I play it, it sounds really cool. Now you have different profiles. You can just change the decay if you wanted to. And this is going to give you different types of cymbals. Now then right here you can have your hit transient. You can make it really long, or you can just make it shorter and then make the decay a lot longer. I'm gonna stay on this one. Okay, so this is the main vibe of this machine. This and this one. So this one is going to be the hit. This one is going to be the timbre, and this one is going to be the wash. So when you play when you splash or you play a ride, you have kind of three main parts. You have the hit, which is the initial transient. Then you have the main timbre of the ride, right, which is pretty much how it sounds. And then you have the wash, which is the splash that you get in the back after you hit it. So if I play it, we get pretty much nothing because we are going down on pretty much everything that makes this machine sound like it, like it should. So I'm gonna bring a little bit of timbre. Notice that this is gonna go up in the level of the timbre. What makes the type sound how it sounds. So this is like the main control for the sound that you are just choosing right here. So then you have the hit, which is going to be the initial transient. Maybe I can just go, there we go, something like that. If I go the other way, it's a little bit more, right? We just get it. Now then you have the wash, which is going to be the splash after you hit it. So if I go all the way up, notice that the sound is going to extend a lot more. I can remove the timbre and I only get the splash. Get the initial transient. We can hear right there. We get the splash and then the timbre. So what you need to do right here is to choose what you want the most. Maybe I want less of this, less hit, and I want more splash. In this case, it's called wash. And you just need to, choose what you want. More tick or more hit, less timbre, less wash, more wash. It's completely up to you. This is why I'm telling you, this one is, for me, the best of all the, the analog machines that you get on the number 12. All right, so, and last but not least is going to be the CB Classic and the Metallics. And with these ones, we are done. Finally, I'm going to go right here and we have the CB Classic. So CB, if you're wondering what the F is, a CB is a cowbell. So I'm going to be playing this and it just sounds like an analog cowbell, Cannot get easier than that. So you have two oscillators playing in the background. You can adjust your decay. It's going to be a lot longer, but it's a cowbell, so it should be short. So you have two oscillators and they are a little bit detuned and offsetted, from each other. So this is going to be your offset, your detune. If I go all the way down, they're going to be sounding in the same spot. So it doesn't sound like a cowbell. So if I go up, you can just fine tune it to make it sound the way you want to. Now they respond to the main tune, right? So you need to kind of fine tune it to whatever it is that you want. But you can go all the way up on the detune or all the way down. Now all the way down again, it doesn't sound that good. Right? You need to find the sweet spot for this one. Alright, so again, this is how it sounds. Pretty simple. Now, the other one, it's pretty much the same as cowbell. It's going to be metallic. And this is just the same, but it sounds metallic, right? So you get your decay. And again, you can go all the way down. And all the both oscillators are just in the same place. And you can just detune them and find the sweet spot for whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, so that's it. We just covered pretty much all the machines that we have available. It was a little bit too long, but now you know how they all work. Now remember, if you liked all of this and you learned something new, to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, you can. Go to the links in the description. You have links for PayPal, you have YouTube thanks, and you have Patreon. Maybe you can be a 1-month patron and just, buy me a coffee that way. Okay, so see you on the next one.